most of the positions are entry level. We as an industry understand that it's new, and most people are going to be coming over from other industries, other roles, right? And so we know most of the time in some of these positions that, well, they're all not entry level, but a lot of them are, because we understand that this is a new industry. Sorry, Patty, did you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that people are trying to come in there in the waiting room, or I don't know if
Actually, no,
someone's
sorry,
let them
I
in.
got them all. Nope. As people are looking to get admitted, I'm admitting them. So we're all good.
Perfect.
Sorry, I should have responded to your
All
chat,
right.
Esther. All good, Tiffany.
Thank you. I
Sorry
appreciate
about
that.
that.
No. No, you're fine. Thanks for letting me know. Um, so yeah, so again, just lean into those transferable skills. You have professional currency, you have value to add to this industry. Don't get discouraged, and don't get discouraged if you apply for a job and you don't get that first job. Keep applying. Dan will talk about this, but there's automated tracking systems that employers are using now, and it may make it a little bit harder to maneuver, but that doesn't mean you give up. And Esther is going to talk about networking and how that can help you land the job. So, I just don't want you to get discouraged. When I saw that email, I was like, I hope you're coming to these sessions. I hope you're getting this information, because again, you have so much to add to any industry. But if you're looking to get into cannabis, you have those skill sets. You just got to pull them out. You got to figure out what your powerhouse of skills are, right? And then upskilling, we talked about this as well. You want to leverage your knowledge of skills. Demonstrate your commitment to learning. Highlight any recent efforts that you've made to gain certificates, and then make sure that you're translating that in your cover letter, in your resume, right? We talked about using specific keywords. That's why in the Match Me emails, we link you directly to the job description. Look at those job descriptions, pull out those keywords, look at the skills, match them to yours, and really highlight it on your resume. Show your value, show how you can problem solve for them, right? Because all employers have a problem that they're looking to solve, and they hope that you can be the person to solve them for them or help them, right? And then apply that newfound knowledge in real world projects. Did you volunteer with a cannabis related organization, or did you help with maybe a startup, because there's a lot of startups happening right now? Put that practical experience and showcase it on your resume. Don't be scared. And then speak the language of cannabis. It's important that you show that you have a certain level of knowledge within this industry, and so that's why keywords are so important. You want to integrate industry specific terms and concepts into your conversations and even your resume, right? Show potential employers that you understand the nuances of the business as much as you can. You definitely want to showcase that. And then, the cannabis industry is dynamic and it's constantly changing. We want a diverse workforce, and we want you to showcase your innovative and creative spirit. Again, it's all about problem solving. Maybe there's a skill set that you have, or you bring a certain level in a role that you previously had in another industry, but it translates to cannabis and you can bring it into this industry. And it's something that we haven't thought of yet, and or that employer hasn't thought of. So you're able to, maybe they call it inventory, but you're really good at procurement, right? So you're not just managing inventory in the store, but you actually understand procurement, and you understand, how to interact with brands, how to identify what's selling in a market, right? Highlight that, show them that you can help them maybe move some of the product on their shelves that isn't moving, because you understand procurement and the logistics of that. So I just would say be creative, think outside the box, highlight your skills, and you'll land a job in cannabis if that's what you're looking for. So that's what I wanted to focus on today. I really wanted to tie everything together, and I wanted you guys to really understand how everything that we've gone over in the last few weeks, now is the time. So now you're going to put it together, and I'm going to go over some more jobs at the end of this and answer any questions you have. But now I'm going to pass it on to Esther, because again, I do want to leave more time for questions. So Esther, if you would like to go next.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you, Tiffany, so much for inviting me. I know we've had experience with talking about networking, but networking in workforce is a really important thing that people, it's a skill in itself. So I'm Esther Queen Mixiloliev. I am one of the two co-founders of Cultivated Community Foundation, which is a nonprofit cannabis organization that does cannabis education within the community. In addition, I'm also MWBE certified media tech company, Queen Mixie Media. And then I'm also the founder of the Lilia Foundation, where we offer resources to our community. So, and I am Queen Mixie because I am good at networking. My networking skills is up there. I cannot lie. One of the things I want to see how many people are introverts. If you could just raise your hand or give me like a thumbs up or put in the chance, how many people are introverts in this room right now? I'll just give you a second or consider themselves introverts. Okay, I see some. Okay, both. Okay. That's a possibility. I see some hands raised. I'm very engaging, so please be ready to like interact with me with my presentation. Okay, so I need to know who's extroverts in this space. Like networking, like going around. Okay. I see a few hands with the extroverts. Okay. So networking is a skill that you have to obviously learn. You can't learn it if you're inside. That is the biggest thing that I take away. There is ways to network virtually, but are you really connecting with people as much as you can than an in-person experience? And that's just the reality. So I'll give you an example. I met Tiffany. I saw her flyer online, and then I went to her event. Now it was definitely in Astoria, which is the other side of me. I'm from the New York City area, so I am in Queens. Queens get the money all the time. That's just a Nas quote. But I went to her event and I connected with her. And then after that, we interacted with each other and then end up having a dinner, which end up a like 15 group of us actually having dinner post the event and just exchanging information. And we've been partnered ever since that time. So that is one experience. But the biggest thing with networking is also maintaining relationships. Most people think that networking is just a one sided thing and what can I get from it? But you don't know what you're going to get because one of the things that I realized when it comes to networking is you don't know where everyone is going to end up. You don't know where people are going to progress in life. And when you're networking and maintaining relationships, you open yourself to opportunities to knowing what's going to be happening. So, one of the things of effective networking is I like to read. I'm a Netflix person and I'm a movie person. Sometimes the hobbies and skills that we have is a great icebreaker. So if I want to say I wanted to network with Patricia today, I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a cute cup. Where did you get that from? Yes. And then most of the time,
Oh,
where
you
did you
really
get
want to
that?
know? I got it
Yeah.
from Skidmore College at a
Okay. Did
networking
you go to
event.
college there?
No,
At a networking? Yeah.
it was a community networking event hosted by the president of the
Oh,
college. Yes.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, it's a really pretty cup. I wish I had it.
Thank you.
That was an icebreaker for both of us. A simple question. Sometimes people overthink networking. It could be a simple thing as complimenting someone on a scarf or a pin, or where did you get those shoes? Or where did you get that lipstick? Or finding, oh, did you recently see the election stuff? Now, I try not to get into politics most of the time, but finding different things of like, I'm waiting for the Dunes 2 movie, and I heard that there's going to be another Keanu Reeve movie, and I'm a Keanu fan. And that's where you can find like people who are interested in the same things that you're interested in and create icebreakers like that for the people that raise their hand as introverts. Extroverts, though, we have a tendency to swoop in and take over the room sometimes, but then we have to work on our active listening. So when I'm an extrovert, I listen and take from what they're telling me to continue the conversation, because sometimes with networking it gets hard and you get that weird feeling of like, okay, I don't know what to say next, and I don't want to awkwardly leave. a simple exit thing is like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm gonna refill my cup. I'm gonna go to the bar and get another bottle of water to exit. But then the closed networking in a better way is also, how do you now do an action? How do you really maintain and connect with people by exchanging information? One of the tools that I use is like Hi Hello, or there's different like Blinks or different apps where it's free. It's really good to exchange. But what I do like about it is that when you start getting organized about networking and following up, you want to follow up within 48 hours, and you want to lock down people's information, whether it's a LinkedIn, whether it's an Instagram, but you want to make sure that the connections that you want to continue to connect with, you solidify it within that time of speaking with someone. And you, again, some connections are going to be great, some are just going to fall over, but you don't know where people are going to end up happening. And it's a free digital thing. You could put your card. And then what I like about it is that as people are updating their profiles, it gives you an alert of the new positions or new places people are doing. What does that do? It does two things. Now you know that someone left an organization that potentially could have a position that you wanted to, or maybe that person's position. Or you can find out that they're in a new sector or a new division of somewhere else that you want to probably go and work for as well. So, one of the things when people talk about networking in any space and not just the cannabis space, I tell people to network outside of your industry as well. One, when you work outside your industry, you know all the things, like, say, for instance, for cannabis, I'm very big in tech. Knowing the technology that's going to be coming forward in cannabis is a great opportunity to be ahead of the curve. In addition, there's adjacent or auxiliary businesses that are working in combination with the cannabis industry. So, one of the things is I'm big into memberships. I know some of these can be expensive, but some of them have a lot of opportunities. So, I'll give one example. I'm a member of the National Sales Network. What I like about the network, I'm not into sales, but they also offer professional development opportunities. And even if you're not into sales, you're always selling yourself. You're selling yourself when you're networking, you're selling yourself when you're interviewing. So I use that opportunity to network. From that network, I was able to connect with someone at LinkedIn, which I probably would have never got an opportunity to connect with them to do my youth workforce development program. So within that, going to these different events, meeting, getting memberships also gets you into the position of knowing what is coming up in the industry, what's new, what's happening. Another thing I would like to say when it comes to networking, and most people who are going to be employers don't understand, you want to also know what your competitors are doing. And that's another way to figure out what benefit packages. Let me hear other employees from other places and locations and figure out, why are they so competitive? How are they gaining all these great employees or people? What are they doing? What do people like about working in their company? As you're building up your organization and your company, you want to know, you want to have the competitive edge. So I said networking for employers and employees are just as important. When you're an employee, you want to know, if I know people who are working at lower salaries, but because the company gives pet insurance, they stick on for pet insurance. Can you believe that? Like, who would think that would be something? Or some people will be like, oh, they have discounts to Soul Cycle. And I like the idea of being that, because that's money out of my pocket. When you start networking effectively, you also know, as an employee, you also know about a company. So if you network in a space, in the cannabis space, and you want to know about another company, you network with the employees. You'll find insight of, like, is this a good organization? What are some of the pitfalls that are happening? What are their employees happy? And then that's where you're doing your research. And it's easy to research online on the website and just see generally what a company does. But it's another thing to actually know from employees firsthand of, like, what is their experience? How do they like it? What's their vacation time? Is their onboarding process a really good? Are they offboarding? If you see there's a lot of turnover, you can get some insight. And it's the same thing for the employer. when you're figuring out, hey, I want to start looking at really well versed people. Where can I find a pool of people and let them know that I'm hiring, or let them know of like, oh, you're in this industry. What are you looking for? What is specific skills that people have? So networking is a thing where you can really utilize as a tools to onboard somebody, or in addition search for people as well and find out pools of people that are looking for particular work. In addition, I'm always good at people telling them trying things out and seeing how they work out. um, you can only network in person and really get the experience. It gets kind of hard because people get lost in translations, like in chats. So when you're doing things, it's it gets kind of hard of like you want to articulate something, but it might be read wrong way. So I always tell and encourage. There's different platforms. One of the things is meetups. Meetups is another place where you can actually find different industries. But I also like because they'll allow you to give suggestions for workshops. So I just was in a workshop with someone from previously from Google talking about tech. So it was really good insight in knowing that, and knowing like, and it was virtual. It was great. And then I also do the in person. So there's a balance of that with networking. I don't want to, I could go on and on about networking and different tools, but I do want to open up the floor for anyone that wants to ask questions in regards to networking. For me, I network in a lot of different spaces. I'm in the media tech, I'm in the nonprofit sector, and because I'm an MWBE, they have procurement events. So you want to go and feel out. So for the introverts, you don't have to talk to everyone, but you want to try to set your goals of like, I want to connect with one person at least in a networking space. And as you get in the habit of networking, your elevator pitch, whether you're an employer or an employee, gets more and more solidified. It's easy for you to articulate your skills or to articulate your business in those different ways. And I say that because, like I said, there's a mixed crowd of where everyone's talking about just employees, but the employers need to network just as much so that you're creating a culture and people are seeing you and people are recognizing you as well. So I did the same thing with Dan. We connected at an event, and then I invited him to do a workforce development with the youth. You don't know where these things, and when we initially met, we didn't think that was what it was going to be about at all, but we end up here. So I do want to open it up for anyone that wants to ask questions of techniques, options, what things or fears that you might have with networking, and different tools you can use with that.
And if you raise your hand and you want to ask the question, I will unmute you. And if you don't, we can save them for the end and you guys can ask questions. I don't see anybody's hand up, Esther, right now. So I think you want to save it for the end and see if they have questions.
Yeah, and then one of the things, like even in the virtual, so I just put in my LinkedIn information, making sure that people are viewing your profile and researching you also. So in every, even virtually, one of the suggestions is having your LinkedIn or having all your info or brief little summary that you can put in into a chat so that people click over and be like, oh, let me see what they do. And then that's also how you create visibility within yourself, whether you're a business or a person seeking employment within the cannabis space.
I love that. And I think that you have to create a professional brand for yourself, right? You kind of like branding yourself when you create a LinkedIn profile. Also, I'll say LinkedIn has a feature where it will generate a resume for you. Now, I won't say just use that resume because you definitely want to tailor your resume to the position that you're applying for, but it's a great starting point. So that I think that's great advice, Esther, right? And even on Twitter and your social medias, just be aware of that this is, the times that we live in, people can look you up. And just try to keep
Most
that,
jobs do.
yeah.
Most jobs actually do look up. They usually have someone, especially for city and state jobs, they definitely monitor your social media like a hawk. They have a division that actually just monitors just social media. So be conscious of like what you're putting up on your social media, or also the option of having, if you want a more professional page and then you have a close circles And that's a whole thing within itself of how to use social media to engage with workforce. I don't only just say LinkedIn, but there's different options and different apps that are coming out, especially with AI being a prominent thing of like fast tracking. I think even with Department of Labor, they have an AI generator. So you want to start networking and knowing keywords to put in your resume that will prompt these applications for you to be able to get a job or land an employee as well, when you have a lot of recruiters also when you come into LinkedIn as well. Um, when curating events, the measures are based on social media traffic. Yes, sometimes it is, but when you start building out a network of people, people are really engaged with those ideas. So I'll give an example. We Dr. Charles Duclass, he has Black Health Connect, but he's also a pharmacist, cannabis doctor as well. His network is in the medical field, but that crosses over. So when he has his quarterly networking event, I went. I'm not in medical, but there was opportunities of salespeople. There was financial advisors that were at this event, and then you start figuring out. From there, I was able to figure out that I knew a couple of people that was leaving a company, and then I let someone else know and be like, "Hey, do you know that a couple of people leaving? There might be some new job postings in this organization or industry because my colleague let me know, hey, I'm leaving this organization ahead of time." That's also a lot of the ways I've actually got my jobs previously, is because I networked and people gave me heads up of job boards of openings that I did not even realize that I was going to have. So I always got a heads up, and then I got insight. They were like, "Hey, if you're going to do your resume like this, because and don't like skim on these parts but really highlight these part." And then I was able to land the job because I had that insight and was kind of prepared on the insider information about the company. So these are different ways like curating networking spaces that you're able to access and gain information, and we all know information is key with everything.
Thank you, Esther. I think that that was great. All right, we're going to pass it on to Dan, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So please feel free to keep those questions, and we'll definitely highlight them at the end. All right, Dan,
Thank you
I'm going to
so
stop
much.
sharing my screen,
Yep, I'm
and
hoping you can see my screen now.
yes, we can. Beautiful.
All right. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you so much, everybody at New York State Cannabis Connect for organizing this great event. And thanks for the invitation to be here with you. And thanks to all the attendees for being here. So as Tiffany mentioned, my name is Dan Kaufman-Burson with the New York State Department of Labor's CEED unit. As I mentioned up top, CEED stands for Cannabis Employment and Education Development. I'm going to spend a few minutes really providing a quick recap of the Department of Labor services. Provided this information in prior webinar sessions as part of this series, but just in case anybody here today wasn't part of the prior sessions, wanted to make sure you understand how the Department of Labor can help you, whether you're a job seeker or a business. And then I'll share some information also on searching for a job in cannabis, and then I'll spend just a very little amount of time on networking at the end. Esther and Tiffany have already provided so much great information on networking. I don't want to dive too deep, but just provide a couple of additional tips if they're helpful at all. So really just quick, the takeaways I hope to leave you with today, really hoping that I can help you understand how the Department of Labor can help you, whether you're a job seeker or a business interested in cannabis. Hoping I can help you figure out how to create and execute a job search strategy, specifically for looking for a job in the cannabis industry. And then related to networking, helping you identify the hidden job market and discover ways to network. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on networking just because Esther's provided you with such great information already, but we'll probably have just a couple of additional tips for you. So, quick recap of Department of Labor resources, just for anybody that missed it in the prior sessions. CEED's work in general, wanted to let you know what we're working on here at the Department of Labor specific to cannabis. We're doing a lot of things, but overarchingly, our goals with CEED currently are what we've listed on the slide here. So working to help build out an equitable workforce in the cannabis industry, really working to highlight opportunity in the emerging adult use market, both in the job seeker side and for business owners as well, and entrepreneurs. We are tracking cannabis-specific education programs at SUNY, CUNY, community colleges, and private colleges and universities across the state. And we have links to those programs on our Cannabis Workforce Development website, which I'll talk about in a slide or so. But that's one thing we're trying to keep a handle on is all the cannabis-specific educational programs that are popping up so that you can connect with them if you're interested. And then we're also working to help connect job seekers and businesses with Department of Labor resources, which I'll go through. And then a big part of the job as well is just working to weave cannabis into Department of Labor systems. As you can imagine, in an older, very large state agency, there's many services that we provide, and we're working to make sure that cannabis is a conversation for all of our different divisions and offices so that cannabis job seekers, employees, and entrepreneurs can take advantage of Department of Labor resources, regardless of how they participate in the cannabis industry. So as a really quick overview of the Department of Labor, we operate 95 career centers across New York State. Through our career centers, we serve roughly 500,000 job seekers and 30,000 businesses per year. And I tell you that really just to give you a sense for the number of people that we help or we serve on an annual basis. And then specific to our career centers, those 95 career centers across the state, job seekers can get help with many job searching related tasks, which are listed on this slide here. People can get help with career counseling. They can get help actually searching for jobs. They can get help writing resumes and cover letters. People can connect to workshops on many job searching related tasks, including networking, interviewing, resume writing, and more. And then people who may be veterans or are justice impacted or have disabilities can connect to services directly tailored for those individual groups. And then finally, we do have resource rooms at all of our career centers where people can get access to computers, phones, and fax machines to use for a job search. So just so you know that there. At the bottom of the slide, I've listed a URL or a link to our career center locator. So you can use this link to find the career center closest to you. And there's contact information for each career center as well. So it's always a good idea to try to make an appointment with the career center instead of just kind of going in unannounced, just to make sure that there's somebody there that could help you when you come in. So check out that career center locator link, find the career center closest to you, and then make an appointment if you're interested in getting help with any of the things listed on this slide. And then in addition to our physical career centers, we do have some really great online resources tailored specifically for job seekers. I'm going to go through them really briefly. First up, we do have a cannabis workforce development website at the Department of Labor, all cannabis specific information for both job seekers and businesses. For job seekers specifically, we have summaries of expected jobs across the cannabis industry, plus full job descriptions for 50 different expected positions in cannabis. And those summaries and job descriptions are meant to give you a sense for what jobs actually entail across the supply chain of cannabis, whether it's growing cannabis, creating infused products, testing cannabis, working in retail, delivering it. So really all those job descriptions, those summaries will hopefully give you a sense for what those jobs actually mean on a daily basis in cannabis. We also have a Find a Cannabis Job page on our website, really taking you through a step-by-step guide of looking for a job in the cannabis industry. I'll spend a little time today going through those steps, but we do have a page on our website that can take people through those steps as well and connect you to in-person or virtual resources that can help you along the way if you need any help. And then finally, I mentioned that we're tracking cannabis education programs at SUNYs, CUNYs, community colleges. We have a table of all of those programs with information on the programs themselves, the topics that are being taught with links to those programs for anybody that's interested in actually connecting with cannabis education in New York State. And then for businesses or entrepreneurs, we have information on starting a business in New York State, connections to the Office of Cannabis Management's website, who's the regulating agency here in New York State for cannabis. And then we also have a connection to our business services team at the Department of Labor, who I will talk about in the next slide. But next on the online resources list for Department of Labor, we do have a virtual career center that you can use to do a work search. You can search for jobs. We are starting to post cannabis jobs as we make relationships with cannabis businesses across New York State. We are starting to post their jobs on our virtual career center. So that's one place you can look to apply for jobs. You can also use our virtual career center to build a resume and also understand a gap you may have in your skills or knowledge based on a particular job that you'd like to apply for. So that's a great resource as well. North Star Digital Literacy and Coursera are both online learning platforms. North Star is focused on helping people develop their computer-based skills, whether it's the physical equipment with computers or software that's typically used with computers. So that's a great resource. And then Coursera is an online course provider, and they've partnered with many educational institutions across the US and Canada to provide courses and micro-credentials on a whole host of topics, many subjects. There is some cannabis-specific coursework and topics on Coursera as well. So that could be a great free resource for you as well if you're interested in education. And then finally, Interview Stream is a web-based interview program. You can use it to actually practice your interviewing skills. If anybody wants to just develop their interview skills a bit more, or if you haven't interviewed in a while, it's a good way to kind of dust off the cobwebs, so to speak, if you haven't done that in a bit. So I briefly mentioned our business services team here at the Department of Labor for entrepreneurs or business owners in any industry, but also cannabis. Our incredible business services team is spread across all of New York State, and they can help businesses with many hiring related tasks, which I've listed here on the slide. So they can help a business with posting jobs. They can connect businesses to career fairs and recruitment events. They can actually connect businesses to job seekers in our job seeker database based on the actual hiring needs when it comes to skills of job seekers. You can search our database of job seekers, find individuals that have the skills that hiring businesses need, and then provide direct connections to those job seekers. And then they can also help businesses navigate state tax credits and hiring incentives. And they can also help businesses understand New York State labor law to help businesses remain compliant in New York State when it comes to labor law and labor regulations. So we'll pivot now slightly. I just want to go through as briefly as I can really how you can execute a job search strategy specifically for looking for a job in the cannabis industry. Things could be a little bit different, looking for a job in cannabis versus other industries. Some things are very similar. Some things are a little bit different. So hoping there could be a couple tips in here to help you along the way during your job search in cannabis. So this is really just a high level view of the steps, right, of looking for a job in any industry, but also in cannabis. And we'll go through these steps individually in the next few slides. But it's really just to give you kind of a high level view of the steps so you can start thinking about them as we're going through it. And then the link at the bottom of the slide is, I mentioned this several slides ago, but on our workforce development website at DOL specific to cannabis, we do have a Finding a Cannabis Job page that will take you through these steps and connect you to in-person or virtual resources that you can use along the way as you look for a job. So definitely use this link after today's session if you need any additional help looking for a job in the cannabis industry. So step one, self-assessment, right? It sounds easy enough. It's really about knowing yourself, figuring out what segment of the cannabis industry you think might be a good fit based on your skills, your knowledge, your interests, and your values in work. When you're thinking about what interests you in cannabis, think about whether growing cannabis would be of interest to you, or are you more interested in manufacturing or distribution or delivery, maybe retail? What part of the cannabis industry really interests you based on just what you find interesting or what you've done in prior work, either in or outside of cannabis. And then one way that you can start to figure out what interests you in the cannabis industry is, again, checking out our job summaries and our full job descriptions on our cannabis workforce development website. Those are really built to give you a sense for what the day-to-day life looks like working in cannabis in many different cannabis jobs. And if you look at those, you can start to get a sense for what the job actually entails. Maybe that'll help you figure out what interests you when it comes to your own job search. And then I provide a link to that, to where our job summaries and full job descriptions live on the Cannabis Workforce Development website. That link lives at the bottom of the slide here, just as a heads up. And then next, as part of your job search, your self-assessment, think about your skills. In session 3 of this great webinar series, we talked about all the transferable skills that go into working in the cannabis industry. What are the skills that you've developed working outside of cannabis? How do they transfer to working in the cannabis industry? And how do those fit best into our particular segment of the cannabis industry, right? So think about what you've done previously and how they actually fit into working in cannabis. And we talked about that a lot in session 3. And then if you have any cannabis specific skills or knowledge already, that's great too, right? You can utilize those cannabis specific skills for when you're building out your resume and cover letter and looking for a job in cannabis, just understand what they are and make sure you're weaving those in to a resume and a cover letter so that you're pointing them out for an employer. And then what do you value in a job, right? Do you like working as part of a team? Maybe that means that working in cultivation could be a great fit for you, since a lot of cultivation operations involve kind of a team effort to keeping plants healthy and alive. Instead, do you like working, independently? Do you like working alone? It's possible that working in sales might be a good fit for you, since a lot of times sales roles can involve going out there, making relationships with dispensaries or product manufacturers and making connections so that a particular brand can expand their reach in the marketplace. A lot of those roles, again, involve independent work. And if that's something you enjoy, sales might be a good fit for you. And then also don't forget the ancillary industry. Tiffany had started mentioning this. I think Esther had mentioned it as well. If you've worked in security, IT, payroll, facilities maintenance, web design, legal, accounting, the list goes on and on. If you've provided a service to a business, that same service is going to be really vital to a cannabis company. And you could transition really easily to provide those same services to cannabis businesses. And that could be a really great foot in the door for you when it comes to making your way into the cannabis industry. So keep that in mind as well. And then again, for all of these self-assessment steps, definitely utilize the Cannabis Workforce Development website at the Department of Labor, which I linked to at the bottom of the slide. Really, those job summaries and the job descriptions, I think, and I hope, will be a really great resource to just help you understand what the jobs actually entail as you look for work in cannabis. So step 2, searching for an actual job. There's really online posting of jobs has become really, really popular. Our Department of Labor Virtual Career Center, I mentioned, we're starting to post cannabis jobs, but then Indeed, LinkedIn are also great job posting sites. And all of those, you can go on there and just do a keyword search for the word cannabis. You can either limit it to your particular area of New York where you live or open it up to the whole state, right? And just see what jobs are coming back when you search for the word cannabis. And you can then start applying for jobs from there as you start to look online. Another good tip is, especially in the medical cannabis field, I find that some of the medical operators in New York keep their individual cannabis company websites a bit more up to date with job postings than the third-party sites like Indeed or LinkedIn. So especially if you're interested in a job in the medical cannabis field in New York, checking the individual cannabis company websites like Attain, Curaleaf is a good place to look for jobs as well. Esther had started talking about this. It's always a great idea to attend, career fairs, conferences, and events. Again, Esther talked about the importance of networking. We'll talk about it just a little bit at the end of this presentation. But going to events in person is just critical to finding a job in any industry, and really could be really critical to finding a job in cannabis. You never know what opportunities that'll bring to either expand your network or actually find a job. And we'll talk about networking in a bit, but attending events is just could be a really big tool in your toolkit as you look for work in cannabis. Next, consider, if you're able to, consider temporary or part-time work as a starting point, and then potentially transitioning into something permanent, right? If you can make a connection with a cannabis company that may not be in a position to hire somebody full-time, maybe you can start on a temporary or part-time basis, prove yourself, and hopefully that'll lead to a permanent position. And if not, at least you're developing skills and experience in cannabis, even if it's part-time, that you can use to find another job. So that's another opportunity. Not going to talk about networking yet. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, please remember you can utilize our career centers across the state to help you actually search for jobs in cannabis if anybody needs any help actually looking for jobs to apply to. Next step 3, start gathering your documents. As you look for work in cannabis, and then definitely as you start to apply for cannabis jobs, you're going to need some documentation in order to apply. You're going to need a resume. You're going to need a cover letter. We talked about those. I think you actually talked, for anybody that was at the prior session with New York State Cannabis Connect a couple weeks ago, I know you spent time on resumes. I'm sure that was an incredible session. I'm sorry that I missed it, but you're going to need to have a resume and cover letter together as you start to apply for jobs in cannabis. And it's really never too early to start working on a cannabis-focused resume and cover letter, ahead of finding a job that you want to apply for. If you can have a cannabis-specific template to Tiffany's point earlier, that incorporates some of the wording that's utilized in regulated cannabis. And if you start tweaking a cannabis-specific resume to use that wording, you'll be one step ahead as you start to apply for jobs in the cannabis industry. And the same goes for a cover letter. If you can start working on a template cover letter that incorporates cannabis-specific information and ties your transferable skills into looking for a job in cannabis, you'll be one step ahead as you start to apply for jobs in the cannabis industry. Then, you can always, there are sometimes additional materials that applications ask for, sometimes transcripts, sometimes, letters of recommendation. So it's never too early to start pulling other kind of job seeking resources or documents together ahead of looking for a job or finding a job that you actually want to apply for, just to save yourself time later on. And then at the bottom of the slide, do have a link to some great guidance document on building out a resume and cover letter and working on a job application on the Department of Labor's website for anybody that's looking for more information there. Tiffany had mentioned that I was going to cover applicant tracking systems and software, and I think you may have spent some time on this in the prior webinar session a couple of weeks ago. Just wanted to go over it again as briefly as I can. Many companies, as you may know, use applicant tracking systems to really keep track of the hiring that they're doing for specific positions. And that includes everything from, the system will help them post a job, it'll accept resumes for a company, and then the company can also use it to make an offer to potential candidates and handle kind of the communication process and the project management process throughout the entire life cycle of hiring. What those systems can also do is they can also automatically screen out candidates by effectively using keywords to sort through resumes, cover letters, and job application materials that have been submitted to really weed out people based on keywords that are not identified in a resume, in a cover letter, in an application material. And what you want to do is try to get past that initial kind of computer-based assessment that's weeding out people, and make sure that you're kind of following some general tips that we have at the Department of Labor to make sure you get past that first kind of computer-based step and get your resume, your cover letter, your job application actually into the hands of a hiring manager. So some tips that we have for people to kind of get past that computer-based step, we've listed here on this slide. Number one, make sure that you're qualified for the job that you're applying for. A system is going to recognize if you don't meet the minimum qualifications, and they're going to disqualify you immediately. So make sure that you're clearly demonstrating your qualifications and the fact that you meet the minimum qualifications of the job that you're applying for in all of your documentation. Number two, take a look at the job description that for the job that you're applying for, and look at some of the kind of cannabis specific or just other important words that are actually used in the job description, and then work those words into your resume, your cover letter, and your job application materials. Tiffany had mentioned, earlier on that it's important to tweak your resume and cover letter for each job you're applying for. This is a good example of that. Look at the words in the job description and the job posting. Work those words into your resume, your cover letter, as long as obviously they match your experience and your knowledge, just so that you have a better chance of the system not disqualifying you because they're not seeing important keywords in your materials. Number three, make sure all your information is completely spelled out. If you can avoid abbreviations, that's a good idea. But if you want to use an abbreviation, do what I've done here on this slide here at the top of it. You can use the full phrase applicant tracking software or applicant tracking system, and then in parentheses you have the abbreviation, so that the system will recognize the full phrase and all of the keywords. And then when your resume finds its way into a human being's hands, they'll recognize the abbreviation that you're using. So it's a good way to use both to get past the computer-based step. Next, make sure you fill out all fields in an application. Again, the system will weed out people if they don't see certain, all fields filled out. So especially if a field is required, but it's just good practice to fill out all fields as long as you're comfortable doing so in an application, just to make sure the system doesn't weed you out because of that. And then finally, this one may be actually the best tip is make sure you use simple format in your cover letter, in your resume, and also avoid using special characters, special fonts, colors, graphics, or underlines in your materials. Sometimes fancy graphics, fancy colors, fancy formatting in a resume and cover letter it will make it harder for the applicant tracking systems to actually weed through it and find keywords that they're looking for. So if you use really simple formatting, it'll make it easier for the system to see the keywords in your materials. Make sure you get to the next step. Tiffany, how am I doing for time? Probably have another 6 minutes or so. Okay, great. Step number 4 in the job search, really just applying for a job, right? It sounds easy enough, but we do have just some tips that we like to point out, which we've highlighted on this slide. Be prepared. Again, it's never too early to work on a kind of a resume and cover letter specific to cannabis and have it ready to go, so it saves time as you apply for jobs. Be attentive, read everything in the application, be current. Make sure that you're listing your most recent information, especially when it comes to your job history, up top, and then go backwards in time from there. So that's a good tip. Be honest, definitely, with your skills and your experience. If you make your way to a job interview, an employer is going to know. They'll be able to figure out pretty quickly whether you can talk the talk based on what you've put in your resume. So just make sure you're being honest with your experience, your knowledge, when you put it in application materials, so that you can actually speak to it honestly in an interview. Make sure you're complete. Fill out all of the materials in an application just to make sure you're not getting weeded out prematurely. And then, perhaps most importantly, be aware. Look out for illegal or discriminatory questions or steps in the hiring process. Some examples of that include, if you see questions around prior criminal convictions, be wary of that. Definitely in many municipalities and local areas, including New York City, an employer cannot ask about a prior criminal conviction in the hiring process before a conditional offer is made to a candidate. So if an offer is made to a candidate, they can then start asking about criminal convictions, but before that, they cannot. So just be aware of that. Also, if there are questions about, a disability or your family status, whether you're married, whether you have children, be on the lookout for that as well, because those questions are not supposed to be asked as part of the hiring process and could indicate some kind of discriminatory practice. And then another example is look out for required cannabis drug testing that's taking place as part of the hiring process. I talked about this in a prior session as part of the series, but some employers can still use a cannabis test to make a hiring decision. But outside of certain exceptions based on the employer or the actual job position type, employers cannot use a cannabis drug test to make a hiring or a firing decision. Want to make people aware of that. And then if you experience or you witness a violation of worker rights, including discriminatory questions or practices in the hiring process, definitely based on anything that I've just covered or anything in general, we want you to please file a complaint with the Department of Labor's Division of Labor Standards. Provide contact information for their division at the bottom of the slide. We want to enforce labor law across New York State. We need to hear about it first so that we can go out there and protect people's rights at work and their rights when looking for a job to make sure that everybody's protected. So just a heads up there. Interviewing. This is when you get there, congratulations. We just have some tips for people that we like to point out. Number one, prepare yourself, research the employer, know the company that you're applying for so that you're informed and can speak about the employer during your interview. Definitely know the job description and the job basics that you're applying for, that you can speak to it, so that you can speak to it and connect the dots for the employer between your prior experience and the job itself and show why you'd be a great candidate for that position. Definitely know your strengths and what you're good at so that you can, again, speak to why you'd be a great candidate for that role. It's always a good idea to ask questions, whether it's of the position specifically you're applying for, or ask questions of the employer and the company. It shows that you're interested, one, in the position, but also a job interview is as much for you to figure out whether you want to work for a particular company as it is for the company to figure out whether they want to hire you. So it's definitely a great idea to ask questions and make sure you're comfortable with the position and the company that you may be working for. Finally, practice answering questions. I have a link to our interview stream platform, but also just great tips in that link at the bottom of the slide for learning more about interviewing. If you just want to find more information, that's a great way to find it. Plan for your interview. Plan to dress well. Maybe you don't have to wear a suit, but just look professional. Right? Sometimes just looking good can really set you ahead when it comes to being considered for a particular position. Pay attention to your body language, sitting up straight, looking confident, and interested in what people are saying to you. That just goes a long way in terms of making connection and setting yourself up for success. And then definitely it's a good idea, especially if you have an in-person interview, bring a notepad, bring a pen so you can take notes if need be, and then bring extra copies of your resume just to hand out if anybody that you're speaking to in person doesn't have a copy of it there in person. And then finally, when it comes to interviewing, follow up. If you can, it's always a great idea to send a thank you email or a thank you note, just thanking people for their time. That small courtesy can go a really long way in terms of showing your professionalism to a hiring manager. You can always, prepare for additional steps, especially if you're told in the interview that there'll be additional interview steps. Get ready for what those steps might be, whether it's additional materials you have to provide or additional interviews that you have to do with, team members at the actual company. So you can always prepare for those ahead of time after your interview. And then it's always a good idea to follow up with the hiring manager. If you don't hear after a couple of weeks after having an interview, if you don't hear back, as to whether a decision has been made, it's okay to follow up with your contact at the company and ask if a decision has been made. That just helps you understand where you are in the hiring process. It also helps you understand if they've moved on to a different candidate, which means that you can move on to actually focusing on applying for a different role. Number 6 and last, when it comes to a job search, stay organized and keep track of the job searching that you're doing. If you can set aside regular time to really focus on job searching, that's sometimes a good idea. It helps you stay in the groove when it comes to searching for a job. Sometimes that's easier than spending some time taking a long break and then trying to get back to job searching. Sometimes it's easier to stay in the groove and just set aside regular time in your schedule to look for jobs, just so it can come easier to you every single day. And then when it comes to actually keeping track of what you're doing, keeping a record of your job searching, make sure you're keeping track of the jobs that you're applying for and the companies that you're interested in. And that helps with several things when it comes to searching for a job. Helps you save time so that you don't, potentially apply for the same job twice. A lot of times companies will post the same job in multiple locations. If you can keep track of the jobs that you're applying for, you can make sure you don't apply for the same job posted in 2 different locations. It also helps you assess what might be working or what might not be working in your job search. If you can understand what jobs you've applied for, whether you've been successful or not, it can help you tweak your strategy for looking for a job. And then it also helps assist you with your follow-up. You can easily see what jobs you've applied for and then follow up to see if a decision has been made. Helps you understand if you can move on with your job search if need be. I'm not going to spend much time on networking, maybe just 2 minutes here. Esther has already provided such great information on networking, but just want to tell you a couple things in case it's helpful as you start your networking process. Really, it's all about tapping into the hidden job market. When I say the hidden job market, that means roughly 80% of jobs are filled by companies who never actually advertise the position. They never post the position online. They never accept resumes for the position. They hire based on their network, right? So a company will either hire people they know or they'll hire people that are referred to them. So when you're networking, it's all about tapping into that hidden job market so you can increase your chances of actually being a candidate that's hired through the hidden job market. And when it comes to cannabis, you may know this, but there are a million things that cannabis companies are doing to open their doors. Posting jobs online, interviewing, reading resumes takes time. So we may see a lot of cannabis businesses look to hire through their network just to save them time. And if you can tap into that network, it increases your chances of finding a job in cannabis successfully. So definitely something to keep in mind. I'm not going to talk about the power of networking. Esther told you all about that, but it's really can't stress how critical it is for finding a job and how it can really help you in your career in general. Esther had talked about the people that you can start to build your network with. Again, that can be friends, family, ex-coworkers, ex-schoolmates, people that are part of your religious institution, people that are part of professional or social organizations, like Esther had mentioned. Really, the list goes on and on. Anybody in your life can be part of your professional network, and it's just good to know that. As you start networking, just a couple of tools in your toolbox that could be helpful to think about. Tiffany had mentioned this. learning the language of regulated cannabis, go to the Office of Cannabis Management's website, the OCM's website, see how they're talking about cannabis, how their regulations speak to actual cannabis businesses and operations for cannabis businesses. It'll just help you kind of speak the language of cannabis as you go out there and you start networking. Really, everything else, Esther has really talked about, focusing on your strong skills and making sure you know how to sell yourself, right? When you go out there and you start expanding your professional network in looking for a job in the cannabis industry. And then finally, just a couple of tips for how to connect with business contacts or just contacts in general as you build out your network. Number one, this is a good tip. Check out the Office of Cannabis Management's website. They do post a list of businesses that have received licenses through their office. Sometimes there's contact information for those businesses. So, you can, respectfully email a business or try to connect with that business, another way if you can find the business name. But that's a good way to find the actual business names and business operators that have received licenses through the Office of Cannabis Management. Could be a good way for you to start to build out your network, is to try to connect with those companies. It's also a good idea to try to connect with industry associations in cannabis. There's the Cannabis Association of New York, or CANNY. There's the CARD Coalition. These are all industry associations made up of business operators in cannabis. Could be a great way for you to connect with hiring managers in the future. Esther had talked about social media and LinkedIn. It's a really good idea if you can create a LinkedIn profile. It's a great way to build a network and stay in touch. As Esther mentioned, it does not replace in-person networking, but it's a really great tool for just connecting with people and understanding what's happening in the world of cannabis. And then finally, Esther mentioned this, and I just mentioned it a second ago, go to cannabis events, go meet people in person. It's really vital, and you never know who you're going to meet, who might be hiring on the spot at an event. So it'll be, I think, a big piece in your networking toolkit as you go out there and you start to build out your network looking for a job in cannabis. And really just a couple quick tips for looking for cannabis events. Follow the Office of Cannabis Management, follow Department of Labor, follow NYSCC on social media, follow Esther on social media, see the events that we're participating in. Many of them are free of charge, and they're a great place to meet business operators or people that are interested in cannabis. You never know who you're going to meet. It'll really help to build out your network for cannabis. And then really finally, if you ever need to reach the CEED team, please feel free to reach out to CEED@labor.ny.gov. That's a shared email box for me and Patty. We'd be happy to hear from you and happy to connect you with resources if we can't help you directly. And then again, a link to our Cannabis Workforce Development website. If you want to learn more about looking for a job, understanding what cannabis jobs actually entail, please encourage you to take a look. But I know I ran over there. Back to you, Tiffany.
No, Dan, thank you for all of this wealth of knowledge. It's been beautiful to see you guys build out these resources and tools over the last 2 years and to see it flourish now. You guys have so many different opportunities, and the Department of Labor is really helping you tap into that. And I would say, Dan, you just offered some great tips. In the chat, I dropped the link to the cannabis dispensary verification tool. I do want to make a point that it is beneficial to look at that tool, whether you're applying for a retail position or if you're applying for a position at a medical dispensary or a lab or a processor or a cultivator, because you're going to find out if they're legally licensed in the state. We all know that we do have an issue right now with illicit operations. And so if you want to know if they're legal and they're legit, because some people do pose as legal entities in this state and they're not, please use that tool first. Because then you'll see if they're legit. And then I just want to lean into what both Dan and Esther said. Through networking, create a professional brand for yourself, build a professional online presence, get on the platforms, LinkedIn, on Twitter, share your thoughts on the industry trends, engage in discussions, and demonstrate your passion for cannabis. This can really be what gets you that position. Also contributing to the community, right? Through participating in industry forums, writing blogs, maybe attending events, start your own cannabis event. I see someone on here, Gregory, who did an event called the History of the Chillum, right? And he was able to network and bring a group of people together. You can do this. Actively share your knowledge about cannabis. We know that there's this legacy to legal, right? Where people have already been doing these things. And now we want your expertise and we value that in the legal industry. And so we don't want you to be intimidated to apply. I would also like to stress that what Dan said, minimum qualifications. Please understand minimum qualifications when you're applying for a job. So there's an interesting stat that I came across this past week that I want to share with you guys. Women are 16% less likely to apply for a job after viewing it. And they're 20%, they apply for 20% fewer jobs than men if they don't meet 100% of the qualifications. Well, let me tell you something. You're missing out on 100% of the opportunities that you do not take. So please look at the minimum qualifications. And if you meet the minimum qualifications, don't be afraid to apply. They may be asking you for more, but maybe there's things that you can learn on the job or through that upskilling. So I just don't want you to be afraid to apply for a position if you don't meet everything. You know, a lot of times, sometimes these employers aren't even creating their job descriptions, right? They're getting it from a tool like the Department of Labor, which says, you know, these meet, or they're kind of getting it from, especially in cannabis, because it's such a new industry, they're just basing it off of other job descriptions. So don't be intimidated. And also the key words, you have to really tailor your resume. Dan talked about the applicant tracking system. It's so important because if you don't, you can get overlooked. In the last week, I've gotten feedback from people that said they've applied for jobs multiple times and they're just not getting a response back. It could be because they're not using the right keywords. Some tricks that people do, honestly, is they copy and paste the description of the job, put it really, really tiny in their header or their footer, and then color it white so you can't see it so that it comes up. I'm not saying you should do that for every job, but there are tricks that you can do to trick the automated tracking system to at least get you that interview, right? So that you can at least be in front of a person. I also want to point out that if you do get the interview and you are in front of a person, ask for their contact information. You might not have had it. They might be contacting you through this automated tracking system. And so if you want to follow up, send that thank you note, or just inquire about where your status is in the interviewing process. You'll need an actual person. And a lot of times people aren't being able to connect with that actual person. So those are all tips that I would just lean into that, you know, I was prompted by Esther and Dan to share with you. And again, I can't stress enough, remember your powerhouse of transferable skills, you know, and your upskilling. It's going to set you apart. It's a competitive market. And don't be afraid to highlight your strengths, problem solve for them. And then you guys are all part of the New York State Cannabis Connect membership and network now, which is great because like Dan said, a lot of these licensees that are opening or are open, one, if they're processing or cultivation, a lot of them are scaling. They're trying to scale because new brands are coming on in our industry. And then if they're retail, like Dan said, they're so busy focusing on opening their doors, they really don't have the time to go through all those resumes, and they're really leaning on their network for people to refer. So we've gotten some inquiries on jobs. Like I said, there's a cultivation facility in Poughkeepsie that's currently hiring. I'll send you guys out information on that. Today there was an email that I know my team sent out about a retailer that's opening in Albany. They need to fill positions from social media to, you know, security to retail associates to general managers. So send us your resume. I'll also put a link in here where you can drop your resume to us, and we actively look at your resume and we actually try to match you, which is a little bit better than the automated tracking system because there's a live person reviewing your resume and looking at your skills and trying to place you in a job. So these are all great things to kind of get you a head start in getting your foot in the door in a position within cannabis. So with that said, good luck to you guys. I'm so happy that you joined us.
I just
And
wanted us for
oh
us
yeah,
to
I wasn't
do
going
the
to end it. I was definitely
Q&A.
going to open up, but go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Esther. No, I just
Yeah.
wanted to thank
Um,
them.
Yeah, no, I think Dan, you have definitely sent some different toolkits. I also want to emphasize the hard and soft skills that you need to just really highlight. Sometimes we don't lean on our soft skills enough about being connectors and being likable, and not likable like you a popularity contest, but likable in the manner of like, oh, this is be a great person that I could work with, or someone I can suggest a job, or you'll work great for this type of position is really open. So I just want to make sure that we emphasize that. And the only way to practice is like actually speaking to people in real life. Again, virtual is great. I think we've gotten accustomed to it, but I've been noticing that a lot of people are having more harder times actually networking in person because they've lost a lot of the soft skills of how to connect with people. I
That's a
don't know if
great point.
we want to go to the Q&A and let
Yes.
some people ask some questions. I don't know if Kayla, I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Do you want to go on unmute and speak and ask your question?
And I will unmute anybody. If you raise your hand and you wanna, I can go in and unmute. Okay, here we go. I see some hands raised. So I'll just unmute. Kayla didn't, but I'm going to allow
Well, we can,
Inga, and I'm
yeah, and
going to.
Hi, can you hear
we can
me?
answer.
Can you hear me? This is Inga.
Hi, Inga. Yes.
Oh, hi.
Thank you
Thank
for
you so
joining us
much,
today.
first of all, Tiffany, for putting this together. I think it's amazing how you've brought all of these people together to speak to all of us that really have a passion to be in this industry. And I just think it's a wonderful opportunity. So thank you so much. And I'm very happy to be here participating with you guys. I think my question, though, is for Daniel. If you wouldn't mind, Daniel, kind of talking about how people could get jobs working either with the state, like the OCM or Canny, and what that process looks like. Because I've seen a lot of postings for the OCM, but I also understand I think you have to take the PCO. Is that correct?
It depends. So the OCM, and speaking as a state employee, not necessarily on behalf of OCM here, but OCM is hiring a couple of different ways. So there's, typically with state employment, there's a couple ways you can get in. It's through the civil service process, which involves taking an exam. And get to your point, one's called the Professional Career Opportunities Exam, the PCO. There's other specific exams you can take to effectively become eligible to apply for positions in New York State. And then a second way you can get in is actually how I was hired. You can kind of come in outside of the civil service process and be hired more on a temporary basis. Hopefully, it doesn't mean that my position is temporary and that it'll continue on. I think it's more the civil service process has a bit more protections built in for employees, a bit more job security, quite honestly, than coming in outside of civil service. And I know the OCM is hiring a couple of different ways. So if you ever look on the statejobs.ny.gov website at postings for any state agency, but also for jobs with the OCM, sometimes they'll have requirements that somebody is already part of the civil service process or has taken a civil service exam, to your point, Inga. So if you ever, if you look, it's always a good idea to take the PCO exam when it becomes available. It's just a good entry exam for getting into state employment. But if you ever see other exams that are specifically of interest to you, take them because it's a good way to become eligible for a job. That being said, the OCM has, at least historically, hired outside of civil service. So there sometimes are jobs that I've seen with OCM that don't require a civil service exam. And it just comes down to, quite honestly, the qualifications. It's hard to know what they're looking for. I will be the first to admit that sometimes job descriptions on the state website are not the easiest to understand. But to Tiffany's point, if you see a job that you're interested in, apply for it, right? It's possible that if you don't hear back, there may have been a minimum qualification you didn't meet. But to Tiffany's point, again, you'll miss every opportunity you don't take. So if you see a job you're interested in, apply for it. Another good tip also with OCM specifically is go to events where OCM is going to have a presence and talk to the people there and say, hey, I'm interested in a job. Can you talk to me or connect me to somebody that handles hiring at OCM? And at the very least, maybe they can give you some tips on how to navigate hiring with OCM and what they're looking for, or how to interpret their job postings, because sometimes that can be hard. I hope that answers your question with OCM. But then on the Canny side, Inga, the best thing you can do is go to Canny's website, follow them on social media, go to events where Canny, the Cannabis Association in New York, is participating, and start talking to them. It's an industry association, making a connection, utilizing your soft skills to Esther's point, and meeting people and showing that you're likable, at least when it comes to interactions, will probably go a long way to making a connection with Canny in particular.
Thank you.
Hope that answers your question,
And
Inga. I don't know if
just to
anybody has any. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add one of the things of what Dan, just piggybacking off of what Dan was saying, of going to the in-person event. When I went to the event, to Tiffany's event, OCM had a table recruiting people for jobs. And why those things are important is because they can give you insight on what they're looking for within those conversations, what you need to have on your qualifications. In addition, sometimes when you're telling them about the missing links, sometimes they will end up taking that and creating a job also. I try to emphasize that sometimes they don't know what they need
Right.
until someone tells them, hey, I noticed that you guys don't have this. Is this an opportunity for a job, or will this be a job in the future? And you'll get them stirring and thinking, oh, this is a missing part that we really need. Let's start creating a job. And that's a lot of the ways like I got into a lot of positions. A lot of my titles were created. It wasn't a position until I mentioned the gaps that I saw also within the organization. So I just wanted to give that insight as well.
I think that that's beautiful you said that, Esther, because when I say problem solving, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you're solving a problem for them that they don't even know that they have, right? And you're able to talk that up. So I think that that's great. I want to point out that in the chat, as Dan was talking, I posted the links for jobs, careers in the Office of Cannabis Management. It'll take you to the state website where you'll apply, but you can at least see the positions that are open and read the descriptions. Also, Cannabis NYC is hiring right now
Yeah.
as well. And so I posted a job for them. And then I posted a link to Canny. So if you're not aware of that organization and what they do, you can check them out. And so I just wanted to make you guys aware. And we do have some other hands up. Devontae uh, Gilliman, you are now unmuted, and we would love to have answer your question.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to say also thank you for just the invitation and just putting this together and being so informative and like just providing the clarity on how to get into the industry and learn and upskill. One of the first things, I actually wasn't seeing any links in my chat. I didn't have like access in my chat. It was like I can tell you what it says right now. When I was trying to send a message, it was as if it says you need to add at least one more person to start the chat. So I didn't know if there was like a different um like chat in a sense.
No, you should. I just tagged you in the chat, so I'm not sure if you can see it now. But I will, as a follow up to this, I do send out the PowerPoints. So I will send out the links to these job postings and to the organization in
Thank
our
you.
follow up email, just so you guys all have that.
Thank you. I
Of
have also
course.
been taking screenshots too of like the information and the links just to go back and take like better notes.
Beautiful. And they're recorded, so they'll be on our YouTube at the beginning of the session, which you might not be able to see because it's in the chat. I did drop a link to the YouTube, but you'll
Okay.
get that in an email. Thank
Okay,
you for
thank you. I
sharing that.
appreciate that. Definitely.
Let's try to go to the Q&A because I saw some questions in the Q&A and okay. I think Kayla, I'm a student at Medgar Evers College. I was a teacher for 2 years and currently in behavioral therapist. Could you kindly provide guidance on specific roles or opportunities that you believe you would be beneficial for someone looking to immerse themselves in the industry? My vision for cannabis extends beyond consumptions. It encompasses a commitment to environmental sustainability, innovation, genetic engineering, and global collaboration. I envision cannabis as a powerful force for positive change, not not only offering therapeutic benefits, but also serving as a catalyst for addressing climate change and fostering sustainable practices worldwide. Without the experience in cannabis, how will I fit into this industry? That's a very good question. Actually, sustainability is a high focus. I know there's a Clean
Mhm.
Air Act that's attached to the MRTA. One of the things that I will say for two folds on it, hemp is becoming a real raw material in this space. It was a raw material before. People are building hemp concrete. So the conversations around how to use hemp, which is the other part of it, green jobs will be coming out of that. Also, how things are disposed of in the cannabis space is another conversation. I used to have a background in pharmaceuticals, and disposing of medications and product is a whole process within itself. So that might be an opportunity, to be honest, to even create those spaces for
Mhm.
yourself. When it comes now, when we talk about the therapeutic part as well, there is a lot of opportunity for I don't want to use the word wellness. It's kind of tricky with cannabis, but experiences in cannabis in regards to like yoga or different conversations. I do a lot of PSA work with the youth on cannabis consumption at an early age. There's a lot of different opportunities in the behavioral therapist part, but there's also a lot of research. That's another big thing that's happening. People are getting research licenses and need people to be onboarded to start researching. So once those licenses come open up, also I'm also on the OCM's medical PSA panel, and they're talking about a lot of those different things. Being on these type of advisory boards or panels and being able to give insight in another area adjacent from those industries is another opportunity where you can create a job for yourself. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Uh, but there is a lot of tech that's going to be coming around there, if I would say so myself.
I
Yeah,
couldn't
the
agree
only
more.
sorry, the only thing I would add is, I mean, I think be plugged in, right? To Esther's point, there's so many, and Tiffany's, there's so many opportunities in cannabis that we see now, and also we can't even fathom, quite honestly, right? So you can stay plugged into what's happening at all levels of cannabis in New York State, and you probably will find an opportunity for yourself. It's just about identifying it. So.
I love that. That's good. We have a hand up from Brandon. Brandon, if you want, you're unmuted. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, good afternoon. Thank you guys for making these sessions for us. And this question is for Tiffany. I was trying to send in my resume to you last week with the link you sent, and I got a thing where it said the delivery failed, but we'll try again in 72 hours. But I don't know if there's any like different email that I could possibly send the resume into or anything like that. I don't know if you're still taking submissions for review or not, but if you are, is there anywhere I could send it to?
Yes, you can. So one, I'll send you the email address that you can send it to, but I also dropped in the box our resume collection a page. So you can go to that page on our website, put your resume in there, and I will personally look it up and give you feedback on that. So you can use that link, or you can send us an email at contact us at NYS. I'm not sure why that happened, but thank you for sharing that feedback technology.
Oh, sorry. Are you talking about the Graham resume collections link you sent? Is that the one?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that is it.
Thank you.
And anybody on this call can use that link. I won't just review your resume, but we'll also, if there's a qualifying job, send you notifications of those jobs that you meet. So it's a great way to just become like this automated thing where you're automatically getting jobs that meet your description. My team goes through there and they try to match people. We're trying to get people jobs in this space. People are hiring, and like Dan pointed out, a lot of them don't have the time to do that, and we want to create some value. So I would appreciate if you could do that. Thank you, Brandon. Did you have another question, or was that was it?
That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yes, of course. No, thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Jermaine. Jermaine, you are unmuted and you should be able to speak now.
Okay. Peace. First and foremost, I want to say thank you, and we appreciate all the information and opportunities and networking, and most of all, the motivation to even want to be a part of something bigger. Thank you all for that. And secondly, I wanted to let you know that I've tapped in and touched bases with the two organizations that we were speaking about earlier. And this, even with the topic today about the networking, that was like amazing because like they're so open to wanting to even be a part of everything that we have going on as far as the Cannabis Connect and all the opportunities that they see as far as even the therapies and the, I don't want to say recovery, this another aspect of it, but the redemption process of getting and being a part of the cannabis revival aspect. So we able to even tap into that, and they want to be a part of it as a thing. So they're excited about that on both ends, and I'm excited just to be a part of it, be even in the realm to be even be able to present the stuff, and that's what's have me excited about everything. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jermaine. We really appreciate that. I really appreciate all of your positive feedback. This is why we do this. We'll continue to have sessions because we want to keep you guys informed and we want to make sure that you guys have the skills to apply for these jobs. New York State is going to create over 50,000 jobs in cannabis, and we want to make sure that you guys are, actively aware of these opportunities as they come online. Our industry is still in its infancy, and it has a lot of growing to do, and over the next few years you'll see that grow. I mean, last week we had 51 stores open. This week, when I just shared that link, there was 59 stores open, and that just tells us that growth is happening, and opportunities are available. So I thank you all for giving us your time today and joining us. Please be on the lookout for more of these sessions. And
There's just one more
oh,
people
go
in the
ahead.
Q&A
Sorry, go ahead.
Q&A part. Um, Anthony, how can I help create cannabis education events and help residents to get certified for employment in my community? Can your organization partner with individuals for this type of initiative? And then the second part question, there be any type of hiring fairs? I definitely can say I've been one of the people attending New York Cannabis Connect fairs, and let me tell you, it is a thing. I think the one in Brooklyn was like 750 people in a very small space. But in that, we do a lot of partnerships in doing hiring, doing these workshops, understanding the lay of the land, and those are great opportunities to understand again the language that is happening, what is needed, and what's missing as well. So that's a great opportunity. I think Tiffany will be doing some events this year, but
Oh yes, I
I will
haven't
also
hit Dan
put
with the dates yet. But we are
um,
definitely looking to do more. We're going to continue to do Catch a Contact career summits in person. This year we're focused on actually doing them a little bit bigger because like Esther said, they have grown, and so we do have a good turnout when it's in person. But what we also want to do is offer more of that immersive training too. So when you come to the career summit, you're not just getting the opportunity to, speak and network, but also leave with their certificate so that you can upskill because that's going to be so important. So please be on the lookout for those. We will be doing more of those. We're so happy that the C team is growing, so that we can put in those requests and they can join us because it is invaluable right now. Thank you, Esther.
And I would definitely say the networking that happens also opens opportunities for other people to speak. Like, for instance, I worked with this amazing girl whose name's Sheena, and she was able to talk about how you can use AI tools to organize yourself or use it as a tool. And I think that's going to be very important as tech is immersing, knowing what technology and where those things are going to fit gaps is really important because you want to know how whatever part of your industry is going to be technified, is what I called it. Uh, and knowing how to be ahead. So having resources like that, or when I met her at the freelance union and then hired her for a media AI tech as a speaker. So there's a lot of different opportunities to connect people and show how their skills are going to be used further on. I am very big as a person in finance and payroll, telling everyone to whatever job description you're going for, to figure out what it's going to look tech wise in the next couple of years, so that you're ahead of the curve and understanding how your industry is going to progress. I'm looking at that myself as a finance person of how they're using tools to push and expand finance in the tech space. So I would tell you, as this opportunity, put your LinkedIn, put your Instagram, make sure that your information is dropped here so that people are connecting with you and continue. Sometimes you might not see it on the website or in a blast, but you might see it in someone's social media posting it up of a networking opportunity. So the more connected you are, the less you won't find out about information.
I think that's great. We have an events calendar on our page too, but it really is based on when people fill it out. You can look there, but I'm also gonna drop this great calendar. It's called the Maze Calendar. It has a lot of industry events on there, not just specific to New York, but cannabis in general. So I would implore you to go there if you're looking for events around cannabis in New York State. They typically keep it updated. And then just stay connected with us. Like Esther said, connect with us on LinkedIn. Send me a connection request, right? Because we share posts and we share things all the time. It just keeps you informed and keeps you in the community. We are over on time. I do appreciate you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, we will be doing more virtual sessions and in person. So keep a lookout for your emails on when those next Catch a Contact Career Summits will be. Thank you all for joining us, and you have a beautiful Saturday.
Thank you. Y'all take care. Peace. Appreciate you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for having me, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Thank you.